Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Forever Young, the show that celebrates life for those of us who are over 40. You know, they say life begins at 40, so as you season, it's supposed to get better. But you know, as you mature, you need to change. Like there are lifestyle changes, and this program tries to adjust some of those things so that you can, because we put the emphasis on the quality of life. And each week we bring a guest to you that we hope will share some information that will improve your quality of life. I'm David C. Linton. I'm your host. And of course, I couldn't do this show without the assistance of two beautiful ladies. I'm such a lucky guy. Of course, first, Miss Jean Hendricks. She's beautiful because she told us that in our very first episode, if you've been with us over these last 8 seasons. But welcome to our show, Jean.
Thank you, David. And yes, that statement still holds true. I am beautiful. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so happy to share the stage with you again.
Happy to see your beautiful face again. And of course, the lady who keeps us all together. She works behind the scenes. She does a lot of the work. She does a lot with getting our guests, and she's really the glue that holds the show together. I'd like to say she's the brains of the operation, and that is Dr. Sharon Mitchell. How you doing, Sharon? Welcome.
Thank you, David. I'm doing great and always share this platform with you and the beautiful Jean Hendricks. Great seeing you all.
Good seeing you too. Now, you know, it's always been a standard here for the show before we get started. Today, what we're doing, for those of you who weren't with us last week, we're actually doing a part 2. We had a great conversation with a professional talking about something about sleep. We learned so much about sleep, but there was so much information that we really couldn't get it all in the first show, so we asked our guest to come back. But before I bring her back to the stage, I'd like to see, Jean, do you have anything for us this week? A little nugget?
Yes, just a little nugget. And it's all about sleep. And it says, reward yourself with sleep. After a long, dry, and very busy, tiring day, the good old night is finally on your way. It is time when the moon up there glows and gleams, and the hour when it tells us to have sweet dreams. So, my dear friend, reward yourself with sleep tonight. Here I stop by to your side to wish you a very, very good night. Back to you, David.
Thank you so much, Jean. Well, we're going to get right to our guest. Our guest is Dr. Glenna Brewster, an assistant professor on the tenure track at the Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing at Emory University. She's a graduate with degrees in nursing, and she has a PhD in nursing science from University of Florida. She's got so much information to tell us about sleep. Dr. Brewster is currently funded by the Alzheimer's, I can't even get it out, Alzheimer's Association and National Institute on Aging. Dr. Brewster serves on various boards, and she's published her work in multiple disciplinary journals, including the Geriatric Nursing and the Journal of Aging and Health. And she's been given numerous presentations for her work at local, regional, and international conferences, including the Alzheimer's Association International Conference, Sleep, and so much more. So we're going to bring her back and say thank you, Dr. Brewster, for joining us again on Forever Young.
Thank you so much for having me a second time. It's a pleasure.
Yes. No, your information that you gave us the first time, it was just too much to pack into one 30-minute show. So we're the ones who honored for you to coming back. Now,
Yeah.
we've been talking about sleep. For our audience who weren't with us, give us a little glimpse of your background and what you actually do. You know, those things are really good, but let's put them in layman terms for our listeners. What do you do in terms of sleep?
So for me, my goal is to really work on understanding sleep experiences for persons living with cognitive impairment and their caregivers who tend to be older adults, and Also develop interventions, behavioral interventions for these sleep disturbances that I identify, whether or not they're going to do them by themselves or they do them as a team to seek to improve their sleep outcomes. So that is what I currently do. I conduct research at at Emory University to do that. I also have
Okay.
worked as a nurse practitioner providing care for persons living with cognitive impairment and support services for their care partners.
Okay. Well, thank you. Now, you were saying, as you said, you sleep. Now, sleep is so important, and we are actually moving around doing so much. And we spent quite a bit of time in our previous show discussing sleep, its importance, the types of and sleeps, and the steps we can improve. During this segment, we'd like to kind of spend some time discussing how the lack of sleep impacts our bodies, especially our aging and our health. So why does total sleep time, should I say, and deep sleep tend to decrease as we age?
So I believe that sleep time don't necessarily decrease as we, well, so I shouldn't say that. Babies sleep between, 17 to 18 hours when they're born, and then when you get to be a teenager,
Hmm.
you maybe need 9 to 10 hours, and then as an older adult, you may need 7 to 9 hours between there. So it does decrease as we age, but it has to do with the maturing brain and the maturity of the brain. So when we get to a particular age and our brains have matured, it has used the time that we sleep, because we talked earlier about the fact that, during sleep, there are certain things that happen during the brain where memories are consolidated, the gaps between the brain work, so we call it synapses. So these synapses are able to be formed. So when you're babies and your neurons are maturing and these cells are maturing, then you need way more time for these processes to happen as opposed to when you're older. So I believe that's one of the reasons why we need less sleep as we age. But after we get to a particular age, so let's say when we reach to adulthood, then we no longer need less sleep. Now, we see a decrease or a decline in deep sleep with age because of multiple things. So, with aging comes taking more medications. And when we take more medications, some of the effects associated with medications might be more greater urination at night. And when we have to get up to do that, then when we interrupt our sleep, we tend to not start back at the deep sleep. If we were at deep sleep, we might start back at stage 1 or stage 2 with non-REM sleep, and then we have to go into stage 3. So that's one of the reasons we have multiple interruptions and more interruptions in our sleep as we age. Another thing might be chronic conditions that we have as we age. So for men, for example, if they have enlarged prostate, with enlarged prostates, then you might have nocturia, meaning you have more urination at nights when you're asleep. So when you're
Hmm.
waking up to use the restroom, then that's in interrupting your sleep. Or if you have heart disease,
Yeah.
and with heart disease, sometimes you might have water retention. And with water retention, when you're laying down, then that's where you have all the water that maybe have been in your legs and the dependent areas of your body that are now flowing back up and going through your kidneys, and then you want to urinate more at night. So there are many reasons why we see as we age and become older, our bodies aren't working as efficiently anymore. And sometimes when it's not doing that, then we would have more awakenings. And with more awakenings, then we'll see a decrease or a decline in the number or the percentage of deep sleep that we would get. But then we'll also see an increase in the awakenings that we would have during the night.
Are you finding that people are truthful online more, or maybe not so much?
There's a lot of filters that women have. There's a lot of things that you really don't know that person until you actually meet them in person.
So, in other words, you guys are being catfish.
Definitely.
All right, let's try this.
COVID has been a really long fight.
and it's been especially tough on kids.
It's been a rough transition for all of us.
Right now, as a father, I want to give the best tools to protect my kids.
So what can we do to get back to that sense of normalcy?
Many parents are asking if it is worth it to get their kids vaccinated against COVID.
The answer is absolutely yes.
My own sons, who are 6 and 8 years old, had their COVID vaccine.
It's an added layer of protection to keep kids from getting any type of severe illness or complications from a COVID infection.
A lot of parents are also wondering if the vaccines are safe.
Yes, it's safe and effective for children.
Definitely safer than a COVID infection.
Children get a smaller dosage than adults do.
So if you have questions or concerns about the vaccine, that's okay.
We're here to help.
We have the tools we need to protect kids and help them stay healthy and all get through this together.
When my wife tells me that she loves me, I said I love you. And I often tell my wife, I love you. And when I say that to her, what I'm saying to her is these 12 things I will do, regardless of how you treat me in return, whether you give it to me or not. And she does. But it's not about what she gives me. It's about what I can project as a representation of the Most High himself. And that's why it's important for us to understand what love is at its core and at its concept.
Dr. Brewster, this next question really caught me by surprise because it says that the lack of sleep also affects a person's being overweight, obesity, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. I don't understand how that could be when you're sleeping and this is affected by a lack of sleep. Can you share something about that with us?
So one of the things I think, I don't know if I talked about it in this episode or the previous episode, is that when we're asleep, our bodies or our brains are able to guide the production of certain hormones or produce certain hormones. So for example, leptin and ghrelin, those are two hormones that are associated with our appetite. And based on our appetite, that will guide the diet. So research has shown that with, for example, leptin, when people didn't sleep well, then their leptin levels were lowest. And leptin is actually a hormone that are secreted by cells in our bodies that are fat cells. So our fat cells secrete leptin and it makes us feel full. But when we don't sleep enough, then these levels are low, so therefore we would not feel full. It'll take a while before we feel full, even though we may be full. So it kind of increases our appetite when we don't sleep. And it doesn't increase our appetite necessarily for healthy stuff. It might increase our appetite for, sweets and carbs and things that are associated with weight gain. So that is one of the ways that we've seen that sleep depth and not being able to sleep well or lack of sleep can increase our risk for for having poorer diets if we make choices to have the sweets and the carbs as opposed to more of the vegetables, or increasing our risk for obesity because when we have larger diets with carbohydrates and refined starches and carbs, then we will be at an increased risk for having a higher BMI, which that's a scale that they use to determine whether one is normal weight, overweight, or obese. So that's one of the ways that the hormones that are produced there when we're asleep.
So Dr. Brewster, I'm going to help Jean out a little bit about in terms of obesity. You talked about water retention. So can we speak a little bit and how lack of sleep can be tied to some of the big sin in our community, such as heart disease, such as cancer? Have there been indicate the same as it relates to African Americans? Are you familiar with any?
So I recently attended the main sleep conference, and I think one of the things is we found that there has been sleep disparities, meaning African Americans tend to have poorer sleep compared to
Yeah.
white or Hispanic. But I feel like it's not as simple as African Americans having worse sleep. There are factors that contribute to that, and it is looking deeper into the factors that would contribute to them having poor sleep. So for example, historically speaking, when you are living in a district that was redlined, and you might not have lighting that is available on the street, you might not have you might be closer to an airport or closer to a noisy highway that might affect your sleep or interfere with your sleep. Or you might, because it's red line and the lack of resources, you might not feel as safe to go outside and walk and exercise during the day. And if you're not able to do that, then that might cause you to not sleep well at night. Or you might have to work more jobs, or jobs that pay less, and because you have to work jobs that pay less, then that means that you might have to work more hours, and as a result have less time in order for you to sleep. So it's more complex. And another thing, given what the history of America is, a lot of African Americans, if you are in an environment where you maybe aroused, because you just never know what might happen, then if your body's in that state of arousal, then it's kind of harder for you to calm down and fall asleep and stay asleep. So sometimes it doesn't even have to do with the environment where you're at, but hypothetically, if you are driving, and your body might not be able to be calm, so I say that I feel like African Americans and Black adults in general might be walking around in a state where where you're constantly aroused. And if you're constantly aroused, or you're aware, then it's hard for your body to calm down. And if you can't be calm, then no wonder your blood pressure might be elevated, or you might be a risk for having chronic blood pressure elevation. But also, if your body can't calm down, then it might be harder for you to fall asleep or get efficient sleep or stay asleep during the night. So these are some of the things that we think about. It's just not, I don't want us to think it's just that African Americans can't get good sleep, or they have differences in outcomes, but there are underlying factors that may contribute to having this higher risk. And if you're having higher risk for having poor sleep, then those are some of the reasons why we would then see disparities in like differences in cardiac outcomes, because you can't sleep well, and then you're at an increased risk for maybe having higher blood pressure or having obesity or things like that. So I think a lot of times is targeting, then identifying, acknowledging, and then targeting the factors that
Precisely.
would be contributing to these
Right.
disparities, and then targeting them to make the change.
Talk to me about how having that musical ear, how does that enter the preaching moment with you, especially in the practice of hooping?
When I'm preaching, and because I'm more manuscript, I pay attention to cadence. There's a rhythm, there's a beat, and so I'm sensitive to that.
Budget. You pay bills.
Yet somehow women like you, like me,
are 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to save ourselves by setting a goal to save 2% more of our income for our retirement.
Why 2? 1% honors you.
And 1% honors all womankind.
So come on, learn more about the 2% challenge at wesaysaveit.org.
Insight about Money Matters 101 for the young adults, the young professionals, the young entrepreneurs. And I'd just like for you to share a little bit more about money.
Here to people who already have money, my opinion, okay? Already have money. This is assuming we are starting from scratch.
If you're just tuning in, this is Forever Young. We're talking to Dr. Glenna Brewster, an assistant professor on the tenure track at Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing. And we're talking at Emory University. We're talking about sleep. We're trying to get the best sleep for us and the things that affect our sleep. Now, I want to switch lanes just a bit because, you did mention something about caregivers and the importance of caregivers, and it's important, but you also conducted research on the impact of Alzheimer's disease patients, sleep disturbances on the caregivers. So what were your overall findings as it affects caregivers and sleep, especially dealing with Alzheimer's patients? And I had some firsthand knowledge of that, having had some members of my family struggling with that disease, and you have to be alert. So what were your findings on that?
So there are multiple things that we found. One was that so we know with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, one of the things that happened with the disease is because it gradually over time destroys your neurons. So neurons are your brain cells. Then we might see changes in the sleep patterns that people living with dementia would have. So for example, they might think that night is day and day is night, or they might sleep a lot during the day, or they might wake up multiple times during the night and be ready to go out, or they might wake up early in the morning. So there are different things that we might see in terms of the sleep patterns that they would have. And as a result of that, many times it would impact the sleep of the caregiver. And sometimes, even if they don't have sleep issues, a lot of times because the caregiver or the care partner is maybe concerned or worried about what's going on, or concerned or worried that something may happen, then that person may feel that they need to be alert and awake to then help or assist or just support the person who's living with cognitive impairment or dementia. So as a result, they may also have poor sleep or changes in their sleep pattern. And one of the studies we did, we actually asked the caregivers about the sleep patterns of the person who's living with dementia, and they were able to report whether or not they took times during the night, multiple days during the week, whether they snored and had daytime sleepiness. And it was the caregiver who actually reported that up to 61% of the participants in that study had some type of a sleep disturbance. So what I believe is that if you're aware that this person have a sleep disorder or they have some sleep challenges, then most likely you might have some sleep challenges yourself. And research has shown that up to 92% of caregivers of persons living with cognitive impairment and dementia actually report some type of a sleep disturbance themselves. And keep in mind, we have about 16 million caregivers of persons who live with dementia currently. So there's a lot of caregivers who are having challenges and problems with their sleep.
Okay, we're getting ready. We're so close to wrapping up. We've only got a few seconds, but I know Jean has another question, and we had to get it in. So, Jean, will you get your question to Dr. Brewster, please?
I think Jean's having some technical
Yeah,
difficulties.
she
The
looks
one she
like
wanted to talk.
she.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's having some
So,
technical difficulties.
so I think the
Dr.
thing that we really
Brewster?
need to do, yeah, the last thing I think we need to really do is find out. First of all, Doctor, because we are wrapping up, you've given us so much information. How can our audience get in contact with you if they want to find out more?
So I am currently recruiting for two studies of mine. One, I'm recruiting caregivers of persons living with cognitive impairment. So if there's a diagnosis of cognitive impairment, whether that's mild cognitive impairment or early to moderate Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body disease, frontotemporal dementia, any type of early to moderate dementia, I'm recruiting them and their care partner or caregiver, if they both have some type of a sleep disturbance, to participate in a study where we're giving you an intervention. It's all online, so via Zoom, and we send everything to you and you return it to us in self-addressed FedEx envelope. So, and we're also wanting to interview you before you participate in the study. So one is an interview, and one is where you are actually participating in the intervention, a 4-week intervention. And you can reach me by emailing me at Glenna, Glenna, dot Brewster, Brewster, at emory.edu, or you can call 404-712-9164.
Okay, well, thank you so much for this very informative session again. Last week and this week, so much information. I thank you so much. I know that I'm going to try to sleep better
Yes.
because of the information that you've given me. I'm going to take some notes. And again, we cannot thank you enough on behalf of Gene Hendricks and Dr. Sharon Mitchell, our producers, and everybody involved with Hope TV. We thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And for you out there listening and watching us on Hope TV, we thank you so much for spending your time with us. Remember, you are as young as you feel, and live life to the fullest. And remember, at the end of the day, life ain't nothing but a number. Until the next time we see you on Forever Young, I'm David Linton for Sharon and Jean and for Dr. Brewster. Sleep well. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.